Hello, and welcome along to TGP Has a Podcast. This week, we're back to our usual format, with myself here in the box asking the questions, and we've got yet another guest joining me to have a chat about their time in the TGP series. Now, we've had his brother on the podcast before, Isaac Gillissen, and now it's Court's turn to sit down and have a chat with myself as we talk about all things TGP and all things Gillissen. Court tells us about the time when they used to race together on the same PlayStation, and also how he's enjoyed his time racing in various different disciplines across the series. We hope you enjoy the chat. I certainly did. Here he is, Court Gillissen. So, Court, welcome along. Thank you very much for joining us in Season 4 of TGP Has a Podcast. Pleasure to have you along, of course. We've had your brother along in the past to do a podcast with us as well, so we've had the full Gillissen family now. But just tell us, how was it that you actually came across TGP series in the first instance? Where did you find us?
Yeah, that's where it all started, of course. I think we got a PlayStation 3 with my dad and Isaac then. We got a PlayStation 3 to play the Formula 1 games that had just came out. So that was with F1 2011. For the following season, we got F1 2012, and I was looking around on the internet to see if there were any online competitions, because I was quite bored with the AI, and I wanted to prove myself against real people. And at the time, I was like 13 or 14 years old. And then I came across the Twitter Grand Prix series on Twitter. I don't think I even had Twitter at that point. So I created an account and sent Dom a message, or I sent the TGP series a message, and then like that I was placed in TGP1 with Sauber, I think.
Straight into TGP1, thrown in at the deep end.
Yeah, I don't think TGP2 existed back then.
Yes, F1 2011, you're right. Yes, yeah, it wasn't
Yeah,
in place.
so I made my TGP debut on F1 2012, because back then the game would come out quite late in the season, I think. So yeah, that's how it started. I think I started like late or early 2013, something like that. Just by just trying to get into an online competition, and that was where TGP showed up.
And who was quicker to begin with, yourself or Isaac? Who sort of had the edge early doors?
Oh, yeah, back then we also played a lot of Gran Turismo 6. Yeah, Gran Turismo 6. And I've got to say we were very equally matched. Although Isaac was just a little bit quicker every now and then, but just by a couple of tenths, and if I tried really hard, I could at least match him. But soon Isaac joined TGP as well, because I said, well, look at this. I'm racing in a real competition against real people, and for a guy that's 14 years old, 15 years old, that's so impressive to race against other people in the rest of the world. That's how I got Isaac into TGP as well, but there was no space, and he had to take part in TGP2. So yeah, if you look where we both were placed, I was the quicker driver.
Well, you could take that, can't you? Initially you were clearly the quickest, and it's only because Isaac's put in a lot more hours the reason why he's got to as quick as he has. So on raw talent, clearly, Court, you're the quicker Gillissen. I mean, we got that one over and done with pretty early in the podcast, but there you go, ladies and gents. Court is the originally the quickest Gillissen. Now, obviously,
Not anymore though. Not anymore though.
well, that's arguable, and let's be honest. I mean, who's won the more TGP GT titles? I know who it is as far as the records go. But obviously, initially, as you said, racing in TGP as well as your brother, you were sharing that PS3 with him. I mean, how did you find that? Obviously, thankfully, you were racing in the end in different leagues, yourself in TGP1, him in TGP2. But would you sort of give each other advice, tips, setups, or would you try and make sure the other one didn't do very well?
Oh no, not at all. We were well. We didn't have the need to have two different consoles in our house, so naturally we shared the same console. But also back then we both played football still, and my soccer practice was on Wednesday night, and Isaac's soccer practice was on Tuesday night. Um, so when I raced in TGP1, he wasn't at home, and when he, so we were not able to give each other advice on the nights itself, but yeah, we both just didn't give each other advice. So I think we didn't need it, or we wanted to find out ourselves. Um, yeah, I don't think we learned a lot from each other. Of course, uh, I knew what he did, and for the first seasons or so, he uh, did the whole season from cockpit camera because it was more realistic.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, he did. I think all his races in TGP, he did in the cockpit camera.
You never fancied doing the same?
Um, no, I did use cockpit camera on the career mode because it's more immersive, but I quickly found out that if you use TCam, you have a lot more a better view to see what's happening. But I think, yeah, I might have used it for a couple of races. I think my first race I used it, but then I either got taken out or I took someone else out at the turn one in Australia, and then I was like, okay, I think I should use the TCam. From then on, I use the TCam.
Sounded like a wise choice to make the switch. Um,
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we'll talk a bit about your TGP1 career. Not that that's obviously where you're most known for within the TGP series, of course. But tell us about your time racing over TGP1. You've taken 4 race victories and pole positions. During your career within TGP1, why is it you think that it's never quite clicked for you in TGP1? Why do you think that on the Formula One games, at least, you haven't quite had that success?
um, well, I really liked F1 2012 and in some way F1 2013, but I joined quite soon when GGP was founded. And the level of skill quickly increased. So that's, I think, one part. My best season was my first season, and that's not because I uh, went slower, but more people joined that have well, a little bit more skill on the F1 games, and I only participated in well, at the start of my TGP career, I only participated in on 2 games, F1 2012 and F1 2013. And at the end of F1 2013, I was, well, kind of fed up, really, because my connection was really bad. I had like I think 6, 7, 8 disconnections over the season.
Gosh.
Um, at that time, at that point, I was like, well, I don't even bother because I'll probably disconnect anyway. And then F1 2014 was released, and that was such a horrible game. I didn't even bother purchasing it. Um, and uh, well, then F1 2016 was released a few years later, and by the time I had the PlayStation 4, I had a steering wheel again on my student room. Um, and then Dom approached me again. So, do you want to do some races? And so I did some races on F1 2016, but didn't. Only since F1 2019 or 2020, I'm like full time back in TGP. But yeah, why it's never clicked? Yeah, I don't really like the handling. It's just too, um, well, not realistic enough in a sense. I Some people are so incredibly quick, but it feels so unnatural um, to drive like that. Um, well, I can't really comprehend to be that quick, and also I don't really spend much time practicing my lines and stuff like that. So I think it's a bit like that. I really like turning up every Tuesday night to race with you guys, but that's about the time I spent on the F1 game.
And do you think that if you had perhaps have put in a bit more time, it could have come together for you, or do you sort of are you actually sort of pleased to a certain degree that you did focus on other disciplines?
Yeah, I tried pretty hard at the start of the my career, so to say, because well, I was a kid. I wanted to prove myself to well race in front to win races, and I was quite competitive in that first season. I think I finished third or fourth in the standings that year, that season. And then later on, I got busy with other things in life, and I'm also quite happy with that. And I think with well, basically no practice, I can still drive quite competitively at times, and that's where I well take my motivation from. Let's see how far I can get with basically no practice and just some setup that I found on Roy's or Jack's time trial.
Well, in fairness, that's much I think the same as the sort of casual Formula One drivers do within TGP. I know it's something certainly I do. Um,
Yeah.
but let's obviously focus then on the disciplines where you have had success. We've touched on it already, obviously TGP GT, but we'll come back to that as I'd like to sort of focus on the TGP cars side of things.
Oh yeah.
Um, so you almost won a championship within TGP cars, losing on the final night in season four, and despite you never really held a healthy lead ahead of Chris. Um, what? I guess first of all, the headline of that is how gutting was that for you to lose it? One last night, one night to go.
Yeah, I was so annoyed, and I think I was also feeling the pressure because I think Chris took out some points from my lead at the race before, because we did two races a night, of course. So I was feeling the pressure, and in qualifying, I wasn't able to match him. I was like, I think fifth or sixth, and he was on professional pole, something like that. So I tried everything to change the setup of the car to get more turn in because I had a lot of understeer in those cars. I can remember it quite well still. So nothing helped. So then I went with well, basically maxed out front wing and zero rear wing to get as much turning as possible. And I did get the turn in, but I was not able to get around the corner because I was spinning every corner because I had no rear grip anymore. And then the qualifying ended, so I was stuck with that setup. And I did 2 laps or something like that, and I was P14 and lost. And I was like, oh no, well, this is not happening. And then I retired the car because I knew I lost the championship at that point. So that's how that happened.
So you
Yeah,
you
it's quite
chose
quite
to sort
painful.
of throw in the towel rather than face, potentially what could have been quite an embarrassing evening.
Yeah, exactly. Because I was not able. I wouldn't have finished in points anyway. And if well, Chris had disconnected or something like that, well, I don't want to win it in that way. So I was like, well, I'm not doing this for another 10, 12 laps. So I thought, well, I might as well retire the car because uh, this is not championship worthy winning race.
And where do you sort of, I don't pin the blame's not the right term, but where do you sort of pin the reason why that setup didn't work for you? Is it a track that you'd done quite a bit of practice at before and you just hadn't quite got it right? Were the conditions not right for you that evening, or how did it come
Oh,
about?
I don't really recall why it went wrong. I think I just panicked a bit with the setup. Like, oh no, it's not working, and then I did something dramatic, and that didn't work at all. Um, but instead, I should have been cool and gone with P6 and then see how the race unfolded. But yeah, back then I was still 15 or 16 years old. So as a kid, I wasn't really well. Right now, I would obviously not do the same. But back then, I just wanted to win, and I didn't see the big picture to just be in a mix. So I think that's where it went wrong, and also that TGP Cast season was so up and down because I think I missed a couple of races or had some issues with connections, and also one race you're driving in the Renault Clio, and then you're Formula 3.5 or a supercar or a normal car. So every race was completely different, and I think I might have been caught out by that as well. But yeah,
Did you enjoy
that's
that
what happened.
format of having the different cars each night? Because obviously in the latter parts of TGP Cars, it did go to a sort of single car series. Did you
Yeah.
prefer it when there was the switching cars?
Well, it mixes up the races, but I was quite frustrated every time because, well, I think I had the natural skill to quite comfortably win because Project Cars is a full-blown simulator, so I think that's where my chances lie. But if you change the format every week, and Project Cars was also quite sketchy, the handling was quite sketchy at times, and I think one car was really OP with controller, and then the other car would have been a bit more OP with steering wheel. But yeah, I couldn't really find the rhythm, I think. But also, you had a brilliant pole lap at Brands Hatch, I recall.
Yeah, well, as we found
Uh,
out on last week's episode, obviously that was just a glitch in the game, a legitimate pole lap. But you
oh
were
yeah, yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
you were absolutely furious, if I
Yeah,
remember
because
rightly. There was calls and the chat for some disqualifications, some suspensions.
yeah.
You just couldn't handle being defeated by an incredible pole lap. But
Yeah, no.
joking aside, I mean, how frustrated were you to have missed out on that pole, taking that one as an example?
Well, it was around the Branchhead Indy circuit in the
That's
Renault
that's
Clio
right. Yeah.
Cup, of course. So lap time was like, well, 45 or 50 seconds, which is a really short lap. And you really had to push to get pole position, and it was constantly going between myself, I think, and Owen and Chris. Um, so then I went quicker than Owen, quicker than Chris went quicker, but only by like half a tenth every time. And then I pulled out a brilliant lap to go 2 tenths quicker than everyone else, and that's a huge margin on a short track like that. And then a guy called Mike Noon, or Nooney, uh, who's been circling around in P10, P11 or something like that, then comes up all of a sudden on the leaderboard with a new fastest lap that's 1.5 seconds quicker.
A
And I
sub
knew
50
that was
second lap as well. Let's not beat around the bush
oh,
here. What a lap.
and I knew that was not possible. And then I think Dom went with your pole position, and he eventually turned it back, but it took quite some time, and I was really angry. Nowadays, I think I would laugh about it because I don't take it like seriously in that way anymore. But yeah, back then I was quite pissed off about it. But now,
Well,
now I can laugh about it.
Well, it's good. It's good stuff. And obviously, if you want to hear more about just what happened on that for that poll app, then make sure you listen to last week's TGP Has a Podcast episode where it was myself being interviewed, and Dom didn't have to give me a grilling for it. So obviously, you miss out to the greatest poll app in history in the TGP series, let alone in TGP Cars at Brands Hatch. But you, as we said, you took 6 race victories across just that season where you missed out on the title. You were very successful in TGP cars. Do you perhaps miss TGP series racing on a game like that? Is that something that you would like the series to move back towards?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think I can be much more competitive outside the Formula One games. If you look at the Gran Turismo series, for example, or we also did TGP 3.5 with the Renault, Formula Renault DLC. Um, so yeah, I would love to see that happening.
And were you moving it sort of away just for TGP just 1 second? Were you disappointed that the Project Cars series, the game series, did change as much as it did, losing that sort of simulation aspect?
Well, we did
Because
that.
you compete quite a bit in iRacing as well, I think, don't you?
Oh yeah, yeah, I really like iRacing as well. So yeah, I prefer the sim racing titles. But when we did that first inaugural TGP car season, I think I moved to Groningen to start my studies there the following season, and I didn't bring the PlayStation 4 because well Isaac was still using it, and so I missed the rest of all the TGP car seasons. I didn't buy Project Cars 2. Um, so yeah, I never played that game. And then when Project Cars 3 came out, and that was well, that was really sad. What happened really? Um, so yeah, that was disappointing. But well, I haven't played the Cars game since the original one. But of course, I'm quite invested in that gaming series because Isaac did incredibly well on Project Cars 2, winning the World Championship in Las Vegas and the European Championship in Cologne. Um, so yeah, I was kind of sad to see it go. But that's where it all started for Isaac, the proper his proper sim race career with the GGP cars. No, not GGP cars, but with the Project Cars games.
Well, obviously, if you want to hear a little bit more about the
Check it out.
clearly
Yeah.
less good Gillissen's journeys and tribulations through TGP series and beyond, and you can listen back to his podcast. We interviewed him in the last series, season 3. So go back and watch that on the TGP series YouTube channel. But obviously, we're pleased to finally have the better Gillissen with us tonight.
Your
So
words, not mine.
we all know Isaac would agree. We all know he'd agree. So, Coert, let's move on then to the crowning glory then of your TGP career, TGP GT. Now, you've taken part in all 3 series that have run. You have been very competitive in all 3 series that have been run. You've taken 16 race victories, only second behind Roy, who's got 27. Let's focus on the first 2 seasons, if we may. It was Roy seemed unbeatable in those first 2 seasons, particularly season 1, and you had to try and do things a little bit differently in some races to give him a bit of a challenge. How frustrating was that for you? As you've already said, driver on the wheel. Love racing games. Roy racing on a pad. How much did that frustrate you, knowing that he was able to compete with you in those circumstances?
Yeah, when TGP GT was announced, I was like, oh, well, this might be a season where I can be very competitive. And then Roy shows up with his controller and chase cam, and then well, no one can beat him. I was able to, well, keep up. Um, well, yeah, and that's about it. So I had to try different things uh, to do no pit stop at all, because Roy is very good with that Lamborghini on fresh tires, but once they start to drop off, he loses a lot of pace, and then I can come back into the picture. But the races were just a little bit too short back then to uh, make him hurt too much. So yeah, I tried everything that I could because Roy and I were far enough ahead of the competition to well try those things out. If well, worst case scenario was for me P2, so to say.
And you
But
were
yeah,
able to get the better of him in that first series, as you said, with trying some of the no stops. But there was the odd track in those first 2 seasons where you did genuinely have the competitive edge over him. Bathurst obviously springs to mind the
yeah.
most clearly. Why do you think that a track like that gave you the upper hand over Roy?
First of all, I really, really like Bathurst. It's a great track. It's very quick, with lots of blind corners, and the wall is, well, right next to you. But what Bathurst has, it's you need a very stable car there, and Roy is very good with a very sensitive or aggressive car. But the combination with Bathurst and his car and driving style just didn't add up. So I think he already lost a bit of his advantage there. And well, I really like the track, so it's the perfect combination. Um, so yeah, I think I've won every race there. I think.
Apart from the sprint.
Oh, apart from the sprint, yeah. But I came close in the sprint.
You did, yeah.
But I think I've only got like 3 or 4 pole positions in TGP GT. Is
Something
that
along those
correct?
lines, yes. I
Yeah.
think you're right, actually.
And I think 2 of them came at Bathurst, so like half of my pole positions came at Bathurst.
And then, obviously, the season came around, the stars aligned. Roy, yourself, going at it in season 3, which had the altered format, of course. Let's talk about that first a little bit more before we get onto the battle with Roy.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts when you heard that the format was going to be changing for the third series of TGP GT, moving to, like it was in Project Cars, of course, the feature race and the sprint race, one track every week? What were your thoughts on that?
Oh, I really liked it at first because, and I still do. Because I thought, well, if I don't beat Roy, at least I can do some overtaking um, to go through the field. Because the first 2 seasons it was either me or Roy that won the race, and the odd Chris Turgood win was there, of course. But it was either Roy or me that won the race, and I didn't have to battle a lot with the rest of the field until the sprint races, and that's I thought it will be a lot more enjoyable for me, and it was. I really liked the sprint races, um, because yeah, you just you're racing each other on track to make passes to go through the field. So yeah, I quite liked it.
And obviously that's where perhaps there is the difference between yourself and Roy. He was struggled a little bit more being in the pack, so to speak. And you perhaps a little bit more naturally gifted in being with the overtaking, able to getting past people. Do you think that was where the real difference was between you and him, and why you were as successful as you were in season 3, or do you think you just stepped up your game naturally anyway?
Um, Yeah, I think so. The sprint races definitely played a part, because I was able to find my way through traffic where Roy was not able to. Also, I think he had a little bit more rotten luck with people that fought him really hard in the sprint races. But it also uh, created that I was able to be a bit more relaxed in the feature races because I knew, okay, the sprint race is coming, I can get some points back. So if I finish second to Roy in this race, it's not the end of the world. And not having that pressure that I have to beat Roy at every opportunity made me a better driver, which caused me to beat him in the feature races as well. I think that played a little part as well. But yeah, I gained a lot of points in the sprint races over him.
And obviously, let's not forget you took more race wins. You took some doubles in races as well. I think, if I remember rightly, Interlagos, the last race of the season, you won both races. Correct me if I'm wrong. But do you feel that the car, because it was the Mercedes, I think you were using, if I remember rightly, too, and the
Yeah.
tracks and everything did just come together? Had you perhaps given that, after 2 bitterly disappointing losses to Roy in the seasons prior, do you think you maybe gave it a bit more attention as well?
Um, well, every season was held on Gran Turismo Sport, of course, and before the first GGP GT season started, I already put a lot of hours into the game. Um, so also into the Mercedes car as well. I used it for the sport modes very often. So I was already very close to the car. So I think it's a bit more about the track combination that played out in my favor. A bit more tracks that were high on tire wear, if I recall it correctly, and tracks that suited my car a little bit better. So I think that played a little bit of a role. Um, um, yeah, I think that were the main reasons for my championship win.
Well, it was a very popular championship win as well, of course, within the TGP series. Finally, you know, stopping Roy's dominance of the TGP GT series, and maybe hopefully we'll see it back for a fourth season very soon. But that's
Yeah.
not just all you've done within the series. You also partook in TGP Dirt as well. Let's not forget.
Oh yeah,
Um,
as well, yeah.
Now, you only won one rally, which is still more than most, coming at Scotland in season 7, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
Why do you think, because you had very good pace across the seasons you took part in, why do you think that you had the pace, but only took the one win? Why do you think that was?
Yeah, I bottled very often in dirt rally. Then I was often on the pace. I think at least top 5. But then I hit a rock, or I hit a tree, or I went off the track, or I got a puncture, stuff like that. That just set me back. The I think you can count the clean rallies I had on one hand across all seasons. And I was in Scotland and Wales. Scotland and Wales, those are my favorite rallies, and I was always quick there. I should have won my first rally in Wales, but then I literally went off at the last turn of the last stage, and that cost me the overall victory in the end.
Gutting.
Yeah, classic. But yeah, I think I just wasn't precise enough. I think that's it. Like then the beautiful thing about rallying is once you go, if you make a tiny mistake, you lose huge amounts of time. So yeah, that's what happens every time. And also, I couldn't find a good camera position, so I played from inside the cockpit, and I
Yes.
think that hampers your visuals as well. So if I played outside of the cockpit with chase cam, for example, I think I could have placed my car a little bit better, but well, chase cam and steering wheels don't work in my opinion. Roy has a different opinion on that, but I can't race in chase cam with the steering wheel. So I had to play with the cockpit camera, and I think, I didn't have a good idea where the car was at some times, which made me hit a 3, for example.
Well, talking of hitting a tree, you came close to a second rally victory in Rally Finland in season 8. Let's not forget as well. But
Oh,
just
yeah.
like earlier on in Wales, as you said, you hit a tree on the final stage, and it
Yeah.
gave Dom Smith of all people the rally victory. I mean, what is it about you and final stages and trees?
I don't know. I think, I perhaps because I know that I'm doing quite well, then I start to think, oh, I'm doing quite well. I'm doing quite well. Don't go too fast. Don't go too fast. But I don't want to lose too much time either. So you're also kind of pushing, and then it's a very deceptive corner that is right at the end of a left 6, and then you find I don't think it was a 3. I think it was a telegraph post.
Oh, that's not much
Uh,
nicer.
no, and I hit that straight on. I was like, no, 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 boom, and I totaled the car and DNF'd. um, So yeah, yeah, I wasn't very lucky in the rallying world.
Now, as we mentioned a bit in your podcast, and obviously as we had with Isaac as well. Obviously, he's gone on to achieve a lot of incredible things within the sim racing world. Is there any sort of guest tickets? Are you going to Las Vegas with him, splashing the cash? Any exciting corporate events you've been going to with Isaac? I think, if I remember rightly as well, he raced a couple of weeks ago in a touring car race around Zandvoort. Were you
Yeah,
there watching him, or?
yeah, that was last weekend actually on the Saturday. He asked me to be his race engineer because, well, they were driving with the three of them. He had two teammates, and I was talking to them via Discord, which is quite cool. So I'm just in the pit box saying, "Okay, this is yellow at turn 10," and then I can hear them speaking back to me while they are on the other side of the track. Um, that was really cool. It was his first race, and he well promptly won his first race. Uh, Not because I was race engineer, of course, but
I reckon it was.
but um, yeah, things I don't know really. He went to Abu Dhabi last summer, but I was glad I was not with him because it was like 50 degrees over there
Gosh.
during summertime. Um, so yeah, I'm not sure if there are any big competitions planned right now for him. But we'll be planning to go to the Formula One in Imola. But that's just to watch the racing and not to do the racing.
Well, Court, it's been absolutely fantastic having this chat with you. We're going to end, as we usually do with these sorts of things, with some quick fire questions, if you
Oh,
don't
nice.
mind.
No, I don't
So,
mind.
no, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. Um, First things first. What's the best track you've raced on any game?
Bathurst.
I should have really expected that, shouldn't I? Really.
Yeah, it's
Um,
like quick questions, quick answer questions. So
yeah, that was very
I
quickly
try
answered.
not to
It
think.
was fantastic.
I try not to think too much.
I've got to be really quick now to catch up with you.
Yeah.
Least favorite track, any game.
Ooh, Sochi.
That's a bit harsh.
Horrible track, but it's just the first thing that comes up to my mind. I think I don't like. Yeah, shit. Now I'm thinking too hard. No, I don't like
No,
Sochi.
you don't like it. We'll go with that.
Yeah.
What is favorite racing game?
Ooh, Gran Turismo.
Which one?
Uh, Sport because I've been the most successful on that game.
I think that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Least favorite racing game.
Ooh, yeah, the F1 games in general.
Anyone in particular? You mentioned one already, particularly damningly this podcast.
Um, well, F1 2012, F1 2013 I liked. I think F1 2016.
2016. Okay, I was thinking you were going to say 14 or 15. That's interesting.
Yeah, but I didn't play those games. I didn't even
Of
bother buying them.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Silly Mike. Um, who is your favourite person to race against in TGP?
Oh, I think that's Roy because we either have great battles in Gran Turismo or we find each other on track in the Formula One games. He's a bit quicker on the F1 games, but we still manage to find each other every now and then. So I think Roy is just a very clean player, and you can push him to the limits uh, without being scared that he makes a mistake and crashes into you.
And who's your least favourite driver to race against in TGP?
Ooh, uh, well, yeah, I don't want to hurt anyone.
Come on, you're Dutch. You can't be the only person not to answer this question. Of the whole time we've done this podcast, everyone has been straight out with a Mike Noon, Owen Quemby, CGH. You're Dutch, man. Be honest for once.
um, well, I don't like to drive against people that have bad internet connection, and I think last season CJH didn't have a very stable internet connection, so I've got to go with CJH.
I think that's fair enough. Um, And then lastly, Court, if there could be any game, current or planned, that you would like to see TGP do a league in, what would it be?
Well, we've got the IndyCar game coming, but I don't think it's gonna do well. But perhaps it's interesting to do TGP ovals or something like that. So yeah, on the
Oh,
IndyCar
that's
game, I
quite
think that
cool.
would be. I think that might be quite cool to try out at least. Yeah.
Excellent stuff. Well, Core, it's been a pleasure to finally have the better Gillissen on our podcast.
Yeah,
So
likewise.
thank you very much for joining us, and we're going to see you racing in TGP1 very soon, I think, aren't we?
Yeah, next week, a couple of days. I'm looking forward to it to fight with Dom and Jack Pearson for P13.
Excellent. Well, let's. I'm sure everyone else will wish me or join me in wishing Court all the best for the dunce cap in TGP1. Well, this has been episode 3 in this series. We're flying through it very quickly, and we've got another fantastic guest joining us next week. But for now, Court, thank you once again for joining us, and we'll look
Yeah,
forward to seeing you on track very soon.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for doing this interview. I enjoyed it.
Excellent. We'll see you soon. Thank you, Court.
Yeah, bye.
So there we have it. What a fantastic career he's had, and the successes he's had so far in TGP series, and hopefully for him, still to come. Next week, we take a slightly different turn, and we're having a chat with Jacko and his time in the TGP series, and also his experiences in creating leagues in ILR and Jacko Car. But for now, we'll see you then. Good night.